All right. Now we are going to the economics portion of mining. So the economics comes down to supply and demand. Supply and demand is, well, simply put, the more supply you have, the lower the cost of the item. And the more demand you have, the higher the cost of the item. So if you have more demand than supply, the cost goes up. More supply than demand, cost goes down. Now, of course, the supply and demand are, well, demand is going to fluctuate more than supply, especially when it comes to mining and minerals. We only have so much on the earth. Um, Other products, you can make more of and change the supply as well. Now, that said, the amount of our supply does depend on a few things, like the development of technology will enable us to get more and more like harder things, deeper ores, ones that might be less concentrated and aren't as economical right now to go after. But really, it's demand that's going to fluctuate, and that seems to be just increasing. So here's an example of China, and you can see as China has become more and more industrialized and modernized, its use of, this is an example using copper, has really gone up. And China still hasn't really caught up to us with its level of what you would call, I guess, modernization. I like the book says the average American households have three cars. That's not the case in China. So if China were to go up to three cars per person, or not just China, but the whole world goes up to three cars per person, we're definitely going to have an issue of having enough material for all of that. Um, let's see. Production is production from a new ore as opposed to like recycling it. And the U.S. population consumes many times its share of the world supply. There's a graph that shows that later, but here is just a thing of per capita. And so obviously, like you yourself don't use this much crushed stone, but it's in the foundations of the buildings and the roads and things that you use. And so they take, probably like by city, how much in a city, and then divide that by the number of people living in the city to get the per capita. So these are the weights and volumes of that. No, these are all weights. Mineral supply and demand. We have, oh, here's the graph I was talking about. So the US population, I think this was 2024, is 4% of the world, yet we are using, over a quarter of the world's reserves of silver and almost 50% that one I can't say molybdenum, I don't know, but almost 50% of that, maybe looks about 40% of lead and maybe 30% of gypsum. um so we do have some where we seem to be kind of under, but definitely over for most of them. This shows the US proportion of use that is imported. So of all the asbestos we use, we import because we don't want to mine it here because of the health hazards. So we just pay other people to mine it and forget their health hazards. Um, Rare earths, a lot of that we import. And then salt, we only import 23% of the salt. Why do we import it? We can either we don't have it on our soil, and like maybe we just don't have graphite deposits here. I don't know. We may or we may not. And so we have to then import it. Sometimes it's just economical. Maybe we have some graphite, but it's maybe too deep or it's not concentrated enough. And other places have more economic deposit, where it's maybe more shallow or something. And so they can do it. Also, our environmental and labor policies, which I do support, that they increase the cost of us going, like our cost of mining is higher than other countries that don't have those environmental and labor policies. Um, and so it's cheaper for them and more economic to go after some of the things that maybe like are deeper or less concentrated that wouldn't be economic for us to pay our people so well or to pay for all the environmental reclamation or preventative techniques we're required to do. And it's a really sad situation. The book gives an example of some company that tried to kind of boycott some mineral from that was using child labor. But ultimately, and that's a good thing, like, yeah, we don't want to buy from people using child labor, but it's like they couldn't because there just wasn't enough of that mineral in other places of the world to be able to buy it from these other places. And they were ultimately forced to go back and buy from the child labor country. So that's really sad. Um, let's see, this is just showing how many commodities are by country. China's definitely showing the most. Interesting though, I kind of think China has the most geologists than any other country too. So some of this may not necessarily be what's actually there, but just, what has been found and how much countries are investing into finding their reserves. Um, and then obviously technology allows for more difficult or low grade ore deposits. Low grade, that's the word I've been saying, low concentrated. Future mineral resources shortages will occur and cause international tension when somebody doesn't have any and somebody else has a whole lot. Then yeah, that's going to become a problem as things become more and more scarce, and they're going to become more and more scarce. So this graph shows the expected lifespan as they're calling it lifetime. I wrote lifespan. This is with current known reserves and current rates of usage, how long those reserves will last. And so some of these, it's like, well, 400 years. Well, that's good. Some of these not so good. Like, oh no, only 14 years left of chromium and half a century of copper. Half a century sounds long. 42 years doesn't sound that long. 21 years left of lead. We use lead for all sorts of stuff. Like, that's crazy. Um, 12 years of gold. Well, I guess your wedding ring is going to go up in value. But again, this is on current demand. So how would we do this? So one, either if you want to fix this problem and make things last, you have to find more reserves. That comes to more geologic mapping, literally just finding more places that might have this that we don't already know about. Technology could increase to where now it's you can go after maybe the deeper things. You didn't have the technology before. It wasn't possible, and now it's possible given new technology. And that's also supply and demand as the value of these things go up, which will happen as the as we run out. The value is going to go up. And once it goes up, then all of a sudden it becomes more economic to go after like those low grade ores, those less concentrated ores, and to get because then, you're making money off of digging it out where you wouldn't have before. The other way to do that is to play with the demand side, which is don't use as much, which is a nice thought, but very unlikely. A lot of our electronics are using a lot of rare earth elements and a lot of metals, and we keep coming up with more and more electronics. I mean, just think of like, your grandparents really didn't have very many electronics at all, much less did your great grandparents. And that doesn't seem like it's going to stop. Plus, like the graph that we showed with China becoming more industrialized, using more and more copper, and that's just one country. Imagine all those other countries that aren't really industrialized at all in South America and Africa, Middle East. I mean, lots of places. Um, and as they're going to want to become more industrialized and have the nice kind of lives that we do, and so uh, consumption is going to increase, not decrease. Um, but I do want to add here, I'm going to scroll down here. So what do? So when you go find these new reserves to increase your supply, you start getting into like uncharted territories, like ocean. There's this little ocean critter walking along my pillow or my pillows, the pillow of salt here, in the ocean floor. Um, so they're being forced to go into these places that really a lot of people don't want them to mine. Nobody really wants them like mining with like the ocean and messing with that ecosystem because we don't really fully understand it. Nobody really wants them mining in the rainforest, but it's not their fault. The world is demanding it. People keep buying more and more things. And so the only way you can really change that is by changing the demand and buying less things, doing more recycling. And that actually has more of an effect and pretty much the only possible way to affect this. Like the protesting um, really doesn't do anything because it all comes down to the economics.